Welcome back to another episode of Research Design Build. So a lot of you have been asking what's happening with the two project CRXs that I have. I've got this Y49, and then I've also got a black one right over here. And progress over the last few months has been very slow, if not pretty much non-existent. But I'm back working on them now, and I will give you a bit of an update on what happened with the steel panels that I received from Wolf Steel. You've probably seen the video where I originally got the two sets of rear fenders for the CRX from Wolf Steel. I was super excited to get them, right? That was the whole plan with both of these projects. I basically ordered those rear fenders as soon as I got both CRXs, and prior to getting the CRXs, I knew that those rear quarter panels existed in the market. I knew they were a little expensive, but you know, they were the only ones that I could find, and I thought they were gonna work really well. So I bought both CRXs. I only really planned to get one, but ended up with two. Then I immediately ordered those fenders. A few people in the videos did point out some issues with those fenders. One was sort of the curvature right here was incorrect. The profile was more like a fender flare body kit sort of to widen it out. It didn't have the sort of smooth profile that it has here. It did have like a very distinctive sort of bend edge right about here. That was, you know, the first sort of major issue that I noticed with them. The second major issue was sort of in this area right here, where this sort of body side molding goes in. And that was not fitting the same way that it does on the factory panel. And so this was actually much wider, as I'll show you here, from a clip when I had the body panels. But with that being that much wider, you know, this trim piece was just never gonna fit, and there wasn't any way to make that any better. I sent some videos and went back and forth with the guys at Wolf Steel, who are obviously fantastic. And they did acknowledge that you know, there were some errors and that they didn't perfectly match the factory panels. And after a couple videos, you know, and sharing details like this, where it just, you know, was not lining up, they did acknowledge that they didn't actually have the factory panels to reference, which I thought they did when they were originally making them. But essentially what they did was they did have a set of original factory fenders. They created a sort of a digital file for the rough blank, and then they've been working off that, you know, sort of ever since. So they've got a digital template that they cut out, and that's sort of their starting form, and then they hand form the fender. So they have drifted a little bit from the original, you know, first factory one that they did. From there, we made an agreement that I would make them up templates. So I made a whole pile of templates. You know, little ones like this that fit in right at the back, arch there. We've got, you know, vertical plane at center line of wheel. So one that went in here, and basically makes sort of like a grid pattern of this entire rear fender. And so they took the original fenders that they made for me back, and I shipped them back all of these templates. And they use those templates to create a sort of a new pattern to try to replicate the factory panel a little bit better. And they sent me some pictures of it once they had it completed, and it looked much better. They had this smooth profile done, you know, much more to the factory look, and things are looking pretty good. The one issue that they still did have was they were able to tighten up this so that the height of this would, you know, better match these trim pieces. I did actually send them the trim pieces as well. And the only issue that they had that they could not replicate, there's just too much steel, that was the way that they explained it to me, too much steel to move when forming, was right here. And so right here, there's too much stretch or too much compression that they would need to do in order to do that. And so there wasn't a way, basically this point here was sitting too far inward by probably 1/4 inch or something like that. You know, maybe 1/8 of an inch, something like that. And so it really meant that this whole fender flare bit here was appeared like it was going to be inboard. And what I think you'd have to do would be actually to cut that, add some metal, and bring this back out. I did ask them if they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do that. They were too worried that, if they were cutting and welding without it attached to the vehicle, that in fact what was going to happen was they're going to warp, other parts of the panel in that process. So they said, well, Steve, you can do that. But then, for the price that I was going to pay for the fenders, I wasn't super confident that that was going to work. I knew they weren't going to take them back again. So I said, well, sorry guys, I don't think this is going to work for what I want to do. So they do have those panels, or they did have those panels. And I'm sure if you called them and you weren't too worried about this, or you wanted to do a little bit of metal work there, they do have those patterns. I'm sure they'd be willing to make you a set. And they're going to be much closer to factory in terms of the overall arch here and curvature of the panel. For a few months, that really put a damper on this whole project. I was really expecting to turn around these cars relatively quick because I thought that I could get those panels from Wolf Steel and that they would end up being kind of what I was expecting. Once that plan had kind of stopped, I needed to kind of come back and regroup, decide what I was going to do now, because I didn't want to just Bondo these and paint them and send it. So I did want to repair these, as best I could. And there weren't any other rear quarter panels that I could find. I could have gotten a corner cut or something like that out of the States somewhere or down in California, but even the prices and availability of those is pretty high, and nothing near me that I could get my hands on. So as you've seen, I've started Bondoing them. And the reason for this is what I want to try to create is a full replacement rear quarter panel out of carbon fiber. So my plan is to get all of the bodywork done, paint this as if it was, good to go and back to sort of factory finish, factory spec, and then I'll create a mold off of this. And so I'll remove the rear quarter glass, everything, and basically make a full factory replacement rear quarter panel out of carbon fiber all the way back to the original flanges where it would have been spot welded. So I'll probably go kind of up to here, so there's a little bit of room to play with here. I'll go all the way into the door jamb of the car, and then right down to the bottom of the car where you've got the rocker panel as well. So essentially what Honda would have produced as a complete rear quarter panel, I'm going to try to duplicate that in carbon fiber with a mold and do some vacuum infusion. It's been a few years since I've done vacuum infusion, so I've been, accumulating parts and tools and that sort of thing in order to make that process work, as well as working on the body work so that I've got a good base to make a mold from. Now with that, also on the rocker panels, you've probably seen on the black car, they're completely rotted out. The yellow car, they're much, much better. Probably could get away with doing some metal patching on those, but that is another part that I would like to replicate, create a mold from, and be able to make, either fiberglass, or I think I'll be doing mine out of carbon fiber, but full factory replacement quarter panels, as well as rocker panels, going right back to the pinch seams, right back to where the original spot welds would have been from Honda. And then that'll be a place where you can basically, where I hope to, drill out those spot welds, completely remove the factory panel, and then put in the new composite panel in its place, and then bond that to the seams. Similar to what you've seen with some people, it might be like replacing the roof with a carbon fiber roof, where they remove the entire piece. A little bit more invasive, but then you're not dealing with even the ones with Wolf Steel, I was gonna have to completely weld a seam all the way across here, all the way down the door, and then all the way here somewhere as well. And so the likelihood that I was gonna be able to get that all nicely welded in, hammered and dollied back flat, ground down, and not have a whole pile of body filler or anything like that in there, I think was going to be a bit of a miracle, especially with how paper thin Honda made these original panels. That's my plan. It's rather ambitious. It's not going to be quick, but I'm almost at the stage where I can start ordering my fiberglass materials in order to make the molds. And then once I get some decent molds and I'm happy with those, then I'll order the carbon fiber supplies and the vacuum infusion supplies to work on that piece as well. The other question that I did have was, are the panels from Wolf Steel worth it? They are quite pricey. The prices that are shown on their website are in US dollars. So if you're in Canada like myself, you know, brace yourself for that. I don't think they actually mention it, it's US dollars, but those are in US dollars. Most of the parts they sell are down to the US. And so they are beautifully made panels. There's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into them. And, you know, they do try really hard to do a quality part. You can absolutely weld them in. Even the original panels that I got, they would fit. You could weld them in. You know, the arch and everything was looking pretty good. It would line up. The area where you would have some problems is right here with the trim molding. So that was not going to be perfect. You'd probably have to do a little bit of finessing where it met up with the door as well. But you could get them to fit, and unless you're parked, you know, if you got the ones that they made for me as a sort of a secondary pair, I think you'd be fairly hard pressed, you know, unless it was parked next to another CRX, to really notice that there is a difference between the two, especially if you're trying to do one of the body kits that actually deletes this full molding here. If it went to that extent, then, you know, these issues would kind of disappear as well. So that's where I'm at with the project. I really hope that you follow along and hope to have some more progress videos as we get into more of the bodywork, but really, I don't think there's much interest in watching me apply, you know, small amounts of body filler and sanding most of it off and then repeating the process until I get this panel just dialed in completely to where I want it. I'll show you some of the steps in progress as I move along. I've got most of the rocker panels as well as the rear quarter panels completed now on this car, so I'm almost at the point where I can start removing windows and, you know, rear bumpers, taillights, so that I can finalize those last little details, and then we'll be ready to make some molds off of these panels. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll make sure to get back to you. So stay tuned to the next one, and we'll see you soon.